Hello, and welcome to this edition of Motivation and Money with me, Mark Terrell, and my co host, Fanny Snaith. How are you, Fanny?
I'm very well, thank you, Mark.
Good stuff. I'm really looking forward to this. Now, I'm not sure whether we can actually be talking about motivation and money today because my buddy here, just been on a silent retreat. So I thought it'd be a good idea to share just 5 things that she's learnt on her retreat. 9 days not speaking, which for me, I'm not particularly extroverted, but even for me as a fairly introverted person, I can't imagine what that would be like, but we're going to hear a bit more about that from Fanny today. So, so yeah, where can we start? What's the point to where we can sort of kick things off?
Well, I suppose the motivation for me going might be quite good
Yeah,
because
brilliant.
we things motivation and money, right? So the
Yeah.
motivation for me going is that I'd heard about this thing. It's called Vipassana, and it's a 10-day. You can do various. There are people that do Vipassana for years. So I think one of the longest ones I've heard of, did a silence for 3 years, 3 months, 3 days, 3 hours. But this is 10 days. So it's like an introductory course to a technique of meditation, um, where you learn to be introspective. Whereas a lot of motivation asks you to focus on things outside the body. So, you might listen to something or listen to a guided meditation. This is
Mm.
completely different in the fact that what you do is you go back and connect with yourself. And one of the reasons I wanted to do it is because I've never been able to hear or feel my heart, right?
Oh,
And yeah, so and people, I mean, Neil, my husband, he says, God, mine's going like the clappers at night. I can hardly go to sleep. And I go, I can't hear it. So that was one reason. And then this came up, and then a friend had done it. So I decided that, and I always just that connection with the self.
mm,
And also, there was also sort of smirks when I mentioned it to people because I'm not known for my quietness. And I think people thought there's no way she's going to do it. There's no way she's going to do it. But I did do it. So I decided to go and check this out.
mm.
So I did.
Right.
So that was that. So it was basically 10 day. You go for 12 days in total, including arrival and departure days, and then for 9 of those days you are completely silent. So you surrender to moral noble silence. That means no speaking, no eye contact, no physical touch, no nothing with anybody, but you're with a lot of people. There are a lot of people around you all the time. So we've all got hoodies on and looking down, all this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But you're also not allowed to journal. You're not allowed to. You don't read. You don't watch. You don't have your phone. Nothing like that. There's no exercising, as it were, not necessarily for yourself, but they didn't have a place to do it because it would distract other people.
Hmm.
We're supposed to basically go to this place and work as much as possible as if we were on our own, not, rather than, so you just don't look at anybody. You just get
Right.
on with it.
So
As if
exercise, you go for a walk and that sort of thing, is it around?
they gave rounds for the walk. My calculating brain, right? So I was because walking, I was thinking I've got it. I need to get some exercise in, a little bit of exercise. So I worked out it was 100 paces sort of around the perimeter of where we had 400 paces. So I used to try and go, okay, so 400. So I don't have to count them all the time. And if I go around sort of 15, 16 times a day, that'll be enough steps for the amount of stuff that I'm doing and all that kind of thing.
Hmm.
I was working
Right.
all that out. And the other part of it, if we're talking money,
Hmm.
the beautiful part of the whole setup, and there are centres all over the world, there are two in the UK, is that it's all done by donation. So that's all part of the Dharma, your
Hmm.
path of life of giving back and serving people, all this kind of stuff. So you literally just give a donation to help somebody go after you.
Really
And
amazing.
that's it. Nobody or everybody who works there, every single person is a volunteer.
Right. And it's in the UK, is it somewhere?
There's one in Suffolk
Hmm.
and there's one in Hereford,
Right.
Herefordshire.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got 25 minutes.
Yeah.
5 things that you learnt during those 9 days. Then you're going to share with. There were many more, I know, but 5 things that you would learn or you've learnt in those 9 days. Then, so number one is.
Number one is I don't need half as much food that I eat.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, seriously, right? The amount of times that we just eat for no reason. We were fed at
mm,
6:30, then we were fed at 11 o'clock, and then we were given two pieces of fruit at 5
yeah,
p.m. And
yeah,
that's it. We were up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and we went to bed at 9 o'clock at night. So that was how that worked.
yeah.
But yeah, just and how I one one thing I loved the routine. This is number two, right? I loved the routine of it all. So, a gong goes, you get up, you do this. Um, a gong goes, you go and do that. You go and sit in there and you go and do that. You have very few choices, which
Hmm.
was very pure and very clean. But one of my things I've talked about in numerology before, but the number 5 comes up for me quite a lot, and that's all about freedom through discipline.
Right.
And I've lost my way a little bit along over the years. I used to be incredibly organized and very disciplined, and
Yeah.
it's sort of got very, very fluffy around the edges. In fact, the stuffing's coming out on
Okay.
many parts of my life. And
That's interesting.
actually,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Well, I'm going
actually,
to go back to those 2 points because I've been talking a lot about discipline recently on the second point, but the
okay,
first point, um, I can't remember what it was to say now. What was it? What was your first point? Do you think?
food.
Yes. So I've had a similar experience in a completely different way where I tracked my calories, and not only that, I sort of delved into the psychology about eating using an app, and it's really interesting when it's the psychology of eating and the habits that you create, and when you feel like a certain way, you go and eat something. Well, in most cases, that's not because you're hungry. It's to do with your habits. It's something that's
Yeah,
you're satisfying
absolutely,
something other than you being hungry. So that was what I
absolutely.
was going to say about the first point. And the second point is it's really interesting, and looks like we are going to talk about motivation. I'm talking a lot about discipline, in that the things that don't motivate you and the things you need to do are essentially um, uh, you need to use discipline to get those things done. Because if motivation will get you so far, but ultimately they won't get everything done, especially in a business sense. So discipline is really important to get those essential things done that that you'll never get around to doing other than if that was if, your motivation won't allow that to happen because you'll always be focused on the things otherwise. If that makes sense.
Yeah, going back to going for the motivation and discipline around food.
Mm.
Um, One of the things that we were taught, or one of the main themes of Vipassana, is not to crave anything,
Mm.
but also not to have aversion to things. Don't run away from stuff and yet don't crave it. I think food's a really good one example to use for that, because we'll crave something and like really crave it, and then spend all of our efforts actually having an aversion to it as well, staying away from it because we crave it.
Yeah.
And what one of the idea is that we find the balance within that through equanimity
Hmm.
of pain, pleasure, nice things, nasty things. Things are just as they are, and that's one of the meanings of a passion. It's like it's just as it is. It's as it is. How we are. It doesn't mean to say that you don't plan and all that kind of stuff, and it's not like it's necessarily the power of now, totally living in the now all the time, but it's looking at things without those themes of craving and aversion and all that kind of stuff, because ultimately those are the things that make us miserable. So for me and my eating, and I think we've all got funny little quirks and with our eating habits, because food is so readily available
Yeah.
and so cheap for in a lot of aspects, especially junk food.
Mm.
For me to go into an environment where the choice was very limited, and your window to actually eat was there, you weren't allowed to take any food out of the dining room, and you didn't have any snacks or anything of your own. I mean, that was it.
Hmm.
Um, and I realized that I wasn't hungry at all. And I was talking to Will from the kitchen actually, and he would start off by making X amount of porridge for the morning. And come day, as the week goes by, he would be making less and less and less and less as people were eating less.
Right.
Just, yeah, it's
Interesting.
fascinating.
And he's
Really
seen that
fascinating.
happen many times. Then he knows what to expect, I guess.
Yeah, sure, 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 sure. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was really interesting.
Okay. So
So,
that's two. So food was one. Discipline was the second.
um, is that, yeah, I was going to say, well, I just love the routine of it all.
Hmm.
I mean, I was sort of, it was when you, because this is it. So, right, discipline in my mind means that you've got to try really hard to do something. Whereas what they're, what we're trying to learn is to have a discipline, like be determined, but with equanimity. Because again, if you say, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, you go back to craving and aversion and all that kind of stuff. And it's about keeping it all,
Yeah.
those
And
who can't.
so going back to the psychology I learnt around food, in that if you deprive yourself of something so much that it becomes an obsessional, and when you do get access to that thing, you then binge on it, and then you're back to square one again. So
Yeah,
if you want something, then just allow yourself something, but just to limit the amount rather than
that's
saying, well,
it.
I can't have something. Just say, well,
That's it.
I know I can only have two bits of chocolate a day, and I'm going to either choose to have them this morning and this afternoon or whatever,
That's
rather
it.
than completely take them out of your diet, because otherwise that
That's
makes
it.
it really
And
hard.
exactly. And interestingly, one of the things I wanted to cut out of my diet was coffee and sugar, and really go down on the wheat. I lost half a stone while I was there for the week. And bearing in mind, I was
Wow.
basically sitting around doing virtually nothing
Yeah.
most of the time. That was pretty good, really. But I looked at the coffee and I looked at the sugar and I just decided, I just went, no, I'm not going to have it. And I haven't had any processed sugar, as in biscuits. I had a little bit of cake the other night, actually, for 2 weeks now.
Hmm.
And I feel so much calmer knowing that I haven't got to crave it and I haven't got to stay away from it. I haven't got to
Hmm.
crave it. I haven't got to stay away from it. I just am where I am with it.
Hmm.
And if I have a cup of coffee, I suppose I go with the dangers as I am going to go back to where I was before. But anyway, let's move on from that because
But just before we go on, that we have, I think, 5 people watching on LinkedIn. Can't see anybody else. I haven't got access to YouTube and Twitter. So if you are listening and you've got a question for Fanny, then please just put it into the comments, and hopefully we'll have a chance to ask the question
yeah,
before the
yeah,
end.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay.
So what was one of the other things I learned? I'm trying to get LinkedIn up on here actually, so I could possibly have a look and see what's going on. The next one is being alone is absolutely fine. I love my own company.
Okay. So is that something you didn't realise before? Is that completely, I mean, do you always struggle spending time on your own, or is that you just
No, but I just didn't really figure.
okay?
I just didn't really think about it. But I actually really enjoyed spending time on my own, even though I had lots of people. In fact, I wanted people to go away a bit more, really. It would have been nice if there weren't so many people there. But it was that was really nice. And I think it's really important for us to take complete responsibility, and that the onus on it's ourselves to make ourselves happy. And and
Hmm.
a lot of the learning was about that as well.
So how
You
much
are
of the time did you spend on your own, and how much time did you spend in groups during the 9 days?
Yeah, but you're not, even though when you're with a group, you don't look at anyone.
No, but
So
just in the company then. How much time do you spend? I mean, do you have a
pretty much
choice of whether you spend it on your own or in company with others?
you can go to your room and meditate if you want to, which I did a few times.
Right.
But most of the time you're with all of them.
And you shared before we started this, about 90 people were on this
90
9 day.
people, yeah,
Right.
men, women, about equal mix,
Okay.
old students and new students.
Right.
I'm now an old student, um, which means I get even less food to eat if I go next time.
Right. Okay. Right.
Uh, yeah, so it gets, yeah, but it's really interesting. What's the other thing I learned? How many have I done? 3.
Yeah.
Well, I learned that I can keep my mouth shut.
Okay.
Um,
I think, well, you shared before we start again about that people were saying, no, you can't do this, and presumably that's the reason why people thought you couldn't do it, because you wouldn't be able to not talk.
and actually, the not talking part is probably the easiest part,
Right.
all told.
Okay.
because there are and then goes on to the last thing that I learned is when you go inwards rather than go outwards when you're meditating, i.e., you start to feel sensations in the body that we just don't notice. We see people, scratching our cheeks and rubbing our noses. That's because you've got a sensation in your body that's happening for whatever reason, that's coming out. When you actually stop and focus on that, there is the most incredible amount of physicality that comes out, both lovely and pretty awful as well. Pains. 3 of the sessions that we meditated in, you had to keep, the challenge was to not move one muscle, to stay completely still, and that's challenging for sure. And also to keep your monkey brain from swinging through the trees. So in all, you like doing all this stuff, but the pains that can come out and the sensations that you feel in your body, which you are then instructed, guided to treat with equanimity. So you experience the pain and you experience the pleasurable feelings. Oh my goodness, are there pleasurable feelings that come up? I just have to say this. It's called free flow. Whew, anyway, but the pain can be quite intense too, like very intense. So it's both, but we treat them equally. It is what it is, and we move on.
So I'm guessing that it was a great experience, and you'd probably do it again. Is that right?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to do it again. Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah, I mean they recommend that you do it once a year.
Okay.
But the thing now is continued practice.
Yes. Well, I was going to move on to that and say, well, so what now? What's now changed? What are you doing? Guessing
Um,
meditation is part of your daily sort of practice now, is it?
yeah, so because I really enjoy getting up early in the morning. Since I've been home, I'm still getting up early in the morning. I have actually extended it to 5 a.m. instead of 4 a.m. And then I wake up now at 5 a.m. and I go straight into an hour absolutely still meditation. Look, it doesn't always work.
No.
It's you again, you're not wanting to go in there craving this wonderful feeling that you get, because that's not how it works, right? And obviously you're not going to crave the pain. Sometimes your brain's like, come on, and you have to back to the back, focus back, focus back, focus back.
Mm.
But that's the plan. So do the meditation in the morning and for an hour, and then also in the evening.
Right.
That's the do. So
Yeah.
funnily enough, when it comes to money tonight, so Octopus Energy, changing the subject just a little bit,
Yes. Yeah.
have got this. I mean, they've got this wonderful scheme at the moment where they're asking people to turn the power down
Yes.
off.
I heard something about that. Yes. Go and
Well,
tell
I
us about.
signed up to it, right?
Right.
I mean, you can. I mean, in money wise, it's just a joke. I mean, you can get up to 100 quid a year. Obviously, you save your electricity when you turn it off, but they're doing it on a planet kind of thing as well. So how many trees are there, so the amount of CO2 for the number of trees, and how many kilowatts of energy that we've been saving. So tonight at 5:30, I'm going to flick the main switch in the house,
Mm.
and I'm going to go upstairs and I'm going to meditate for an hour.
Okay. So
And
everything will
all
be
the
off in your house for an hour.
everything, I'm going to flick
Yeah.
the
I
main
mean,
switch.
fridges and freezers will be fine for an hour, I'm sure.
Yeah, of course it will. Yeah, even the fish. Who's that? So Phil Kilburn's here. He said he's a recovering perfectionist. I love that. He says I'm in too. Is that with the octopus thing, Phil? I think he's talking about the octopus thing.
Oh yeah.
We yeah. So I'll think about you when I'm meditating tonight, or
Yeah.
maybe I
I'm
won't.
not seeing that because I'm concentrating on the
Oh, I've got
feed, but for some reason it doesn't come through on the questions on the
no.
VCAT.
I've got my other screen up. So yeah, but it really was a fascinating experience,
Yeah.
and the people that were on it were so diversified,
Hmm.
really, really different kinds of people, all sorts of people, all ages as well. I was sitting next to a 68-year-old Russian lady, and there was an actress there, and there were systems analysts and all sorts of people there.
Yeah. And so tell us about the period after the silence was broken, and when you, because presumably there was some time that you had to sort of reflect and share your experience with those that
Yeah, so
were on.
on the last day, on day 10, at 11 o'clock, we were allowed to break the code of noble silence. That was very strange because we all wanted to talk, but we didn't want to talk. It was fascinating actually, thinking about that, and everybody sort of started getting into little groups and talking about their experience. And I actually went for a walk on my own around the grounds, just because it took about 5 minutes of talking, and I was just like, oh my god, that's so noisy. The interesting part about going back into the meditation hall after that was that you sat down for the group meditation, which is the complete silent one, still silent one, and it felt like I had literally gone back to day one.
Wow.
Like my brain was everywhere, everything going everywhere. Luckily, I can say now that it's come back, but I thought, oh my god, just this is it now. It's just broken. I've just lost everything, but that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, very. My creative brain was literally on overdrive.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
my mum always used to say in a sort of quite a derogatory fashion, for goodness sake, Francis, you've got such a vivid imagination. And one of the things that came out was, do you know what? I damn well do have a vivid imagination. And how amazing is that?
Mm.
And if you allow this thing to come out, it's like, it's great.
Parents are great at sort of painting our superpowers as our problems or our negative traits, don't they? And actually, when you think back to what our parents have sort of said to us when we were younger, it's amazing how much of that stays with us. And those things that they saw as negatives are actually the things that we really need now. And you almost got to like go back there and say, oh, actually, I know I can do this because I used to do it when I was a kid, sort of thing.
Yes, our parents are responsible. Well, we all know that they did their best with
Yeah, it's
whatever
not
they.
a criticism. It's just that's just the way that things work, and I'm sure we've done the same to our kids. It's just it's just you do those things on the spur of the moment or something that's happening for you. You sort of it's you're mirroring what you're thinking onto them. Really, it's
Yeah,
more about what you're thinking as to what they're doing, isn't it? And how you
yeah.
are perceiving what they're doing.
But I think again, and this is that childhood we talk. A lot of people talk about trauma. There's big T trauma and there's little T trauma, right? And those kind of things, those relationships that you have with your parents, or things that are said to you when you're a child, or if you're constantly told that you're a disappointment or that you're rubbish or something like that.
Mm.
Runs deep, right? It runs deep for a lot of people, including me. I've got my own things, and I'm sure there so many people have it and don't even realize it. And this is the interesting thing about this still silent meditation, that it's like plucking out those rotten roots of you as a glorious tree. I know that sounds like a little bit woo woo, but it's seriously, it's like it's really trying to get down to that root without having to go, well, what happened? How did you feel about that? Let's mull it all over. Which actually, when you're taking somebody back to that emotional feeling there, you're almost reinforcing it.
Yeah.
You don't really want to be doing that too much. So just to give you an example of some of the physicality, on day 3, I got pains in my legs that were literally excruciating. And they only happened when I lay down. It didn't happen in the hall. So I can't say it was because I had my legs crossed and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And this pain lasted for about 3 days. And I've never felt anything like it. It's the closest to pain of childbirth that I've experienced, I think.
Right.
And standing up and walking round was awful. And of course, you're not allowed painkillers. You're not allowed, because you're supposed to be experiencing this pain. I have to say there was a large amount of gritted teeth and going, well, I'm experiencing the pain, like this, because I didn't really know everything that was coming at that point, that was coming along.
Mm-hmm.
But the pain was incredible. But when the pain started to go away, because everything's changing, right? That's the other thing they talk about. Everything's changing. There's the constant change. That's that. What do they call that when you have something that goes against each other?
Can't think of it at the
Constant
moment.
and change. You know that what's it? Is it not a dichotomy? Is it? What's it called?
Sounds about right. Yeah.
But yeah, when you say something and it's got a double thing, but they're saying to you everything's changing, so you observe it and in life as it is, and that's how it goes on. But
Mm.
the pain was great, but I sort of felt a whole load of stuff shift.
I guess what I'm sort of relating this to when you've given up, obviously speaking for these 9 days. Well, similar things happen when people want to give up something like smoking, alcohol, coffee, and all those sort of things. You have a period of time where your body is craving or whatever it is that it needs those things. It's telling you that it needs them. Then it obviously then wanes, and then after a while you actually don't realize that you don't need it anymore, and it doesn't become a problem. So it's that wave, isn't it? That what do you call it? We talk about the change curve, where you've got more and more pain, which is where you can quite easily give up. But actually, if you get to the bottom and then start coming back up again, that's when you start to see the biggest change and the benefits of what you've been doing. So that sort of resonate with the sort of what
Yeah,
you went
yeah,
through in those 9 days.
a little bit. I didn't expect that kind of pain. I really didn't
Right.
expect that. And there were other things as well, which I won't talk about on air. But it's like, I thought that, look, I practiced sitting on a cushion with my legs crossed for 35 minutes.
Right.
That's not enough. But it's, but the pains that you get, I don't know necessarily whether those pains were from that. I don't know what it was all about. I'd love if anybody goes into neuroscience and all that kind of stuff and the
Mhm.
metaphysics and all those kind of things, and they have any ideas. I'd love to know
But
what it is.
it went away without you doing anything. You didn't, obviously, like you said, you didn't take any painkillers, but eventually it stopped.
After 3 nights.
Right.
But it was only bad when I went to bed.
Right.
Fine walking around during the day.
Okay.
Very strange.
Might be
Fine
a
sitting.
toxic thing. You mentioned your diet. I don't think you mentioned it
Oh
since
yeah,
you've been.
very clean food, very,
Yeah.
very lovely clean food. I stayed away from the sugar, I stayed away from the coffee, and I stayed away from the wheat as much
Hmm.
as pretty much, um, and that felt amazing, and I stuck with that as well. So yeah, drank lots of water,
And what was a typical meal then? Do you?
just beautiful, beautiful vegetarian food. So you go in
Mhm,
and there'd be like breakfast was porridge, cereals, toast,
mhm,
and then lunch, which is at 11 o'clock. Was like a curry and rice or couscous or quinoa, or so there was some pasta and a sort of like used to call it a slop dish, but I think most people call it like a casserole affair.
okay.
We had, which actually, if you look into Ayurvedic stuff, we do actually have food types that we prefer, and that's just up my street. I love one pot dishes, that sort
Mhm,
of thing. I brought home all the recipes. So yeah, absolutely gorgeous. Chickpeas, beans,
mhm. Right.
you know.
Fantastic. Sadly, we've got the 30 minutes have already gone by. I
Gone
could
so
probably
fast.
talk and listen to you talking about it for hours, but sounds like a fascinating experience. And I think I'm sure we'll be talking again about this. It's going to come up in our conversations going forward. I'm sure. Um,
Mm.
um, so so just to wrap up, then, is there anything else you want to share before we sort of bid our farewells?
Don't think so. I don't think so. I think no, I don't think so. I'm happy to keep my mouth shut about anything else.
That's one of the things you did learn. Um, so back to the day job. You're back as Fanny Snaith, the money coach.
I
Uh,
am, yeah,
yeah.
working on projects and I'm working on running another My Money Makeover next January. So another course.
Right.
So yeah, just getting ready to get that sorted and get people on board.
Cool. Excellent. So I'll share what I'm doing now. This time next week, I won't be doing this because Phil, who you mentioned earlier, and I are doing a masterclass about ditching the business plan and creating a visual idea of your business. I think it's a great concept because
Phil, who's
lot
Phil?
Phil Kilburn.
Okay.
Yeah. Look him up. He's going to do his bit around how you create um, basically a business plan that's visual as opposed to a written one. So we're not talking about a business plan that you'd give to an investor. We're talking about something that actually is useful for you as the business owner to refer to and make sure you update it and all those sort of things, which you can easily update with this model. I'm going to do my bit around.
The one that's posting the comments. I was
That's
getting
right,
all
yeah.
confused.
The
Sorry.
one that
We're
posted the
covering
comments, which I
perfectionists.
can't see at the moment.
Yeah.
So I'm doing that next week with Phil. So pop along. I'll share the link where you can book on to come and join us for that hour. It's 12 till 1. And you will hopefully be able to understand how 9 elements work together and how motivation is key for this, and making sure that the motivation for you and those that you work with is taken into account. And I'll be doing obviously that piece, and then also there'll be an opportunity to work with me and Phil in the new year if you want to, on that exactly the things that we're going to share. So that's good. I'm looking forward to it. So there we are. Great to catch up again, Fanny. It's been a while. There's been all sorts of things going on since you've been away, but I'm sure we'll catch up with that soon. But until next time, the next time we have our little get together. Thanks for those that came to join. Thanks for any of the comments, which I haven't seen, but we'll follow up with after we finish. And until next time, we'll see you then.
Yeah.